Arctic National Wildlife Refuge was founded back by Eisenhower in the middle of the century after a survey conducted by a group of American biologists up there who noted just how incredible it was, even at the time. That large of a tract of wilderness, an entire ecosystem environment, totally protected without any big development, was notable. Notable enough at the time for Eisenhower to listen and set aside a large amount of acres in that coastal plain of the Arctic Refuge, which is the most biologically biodiverse, rich part of the refuge. And then that was held, President Carter came in and expanded the refuge to its current size, over 19 million acres, almost 20 million acres, protecting not just that coastal refuge, but a range of different ecosystems, environments as well, from the high mountains to the coastal plain. So a lot of more species and a lot more land was protected through that effort as well. And then that held through. There have been efforts over the years to expand development up there just in general. We started on this campaign really in the early 90s is when we got super active, the Arctic Defense Campaign protecting this. We were founded by a group of indigenous Alaskans, activists, national environmental nonprofit representatives, and just everyday people that have been collectively working towards protecting this place for 20 years. And we've been super successful. We've been able to convince our representatives time and time again in super important places like Colorado, where public lands are already a big concern, and we've had support from both sides of the aisle. We've had successes in all these places, and that's why this land is still protected to this day. However, that changes administration to administration. There were big efforts in the last Trump administration to really kickstart drilling up there. They had, I believe, 9 lease sales in January of 2021. 7 of those lease sales, and this is selling off land within the refuge for oil and gas drilling, as mandated in that first tax bill back in the first Trump administration. So these lease sales are trying to sell off this land. They had 9 of those lease sales that went through. 7 of them were to the Alaskan State Energy and Development Company, so it's not private sales. 2 of them were to private oil and gas company. They were supposed to raise, I believe, it was 1.56 billion out of it that was promised in that bill. It's what Trump campaigned on and had stump speeches on. They raised 12 million, which that's not chump change. That's 1% of the promised return. And the private companies that bought it actually really lobbied to return that land. Actually, they didn't want it. So the only actual active lease sales up there right now are owned by the Alaskan State Energy Company. So it didn't go well the first time. Knowing that and maybe being a little bit ticked off by that, they're trying to kind of redouble their efforts this time around. There are still no private sales up there right now. The lease sales that are still currently owned are owned by that Alaskan company, and the ones that they're trying to sell off this fall, we're trying to delay or stop or halt all those sales. But we imagine it'll go a lot to that Alaskan State Company again, and they're the ones that are really pushing to drill up there and to explore. So they're kind of our chief antagonist, and we want that land either to be sold back to the federal government or protected from the Alaskan state perspective. But yeah, so hopefully we can continue to limit these lease sales or stop moving forward. I imagine that we'll be able to. There really isn't a huge corporate push to get any of this done. I mean, pretty much every major U.S. bank, like Chase, Goldman Sachs, and almost every major U.S. insurer has said that they want nothing to do with the Arctic. And from a public relations perspective, we can understand that as them caring about the environment or saying that they do. It certainly looks good. But these are corporations, and they're out there to make money. And the fact that all these banks and insurers are saying we don't want anything to do with this shows economically just how little this makes sense. Long story short, it's this political push that we've been trying to fight over the last 20 years. Political push usually from the highest levels of the federal government, the federal agencies that control this public land. They're trying to get this done. Drilling does not have broad-based public support. We know that. And it doesn't have support among the business world. So we have this broad coalition of people already that want to get this done. We know that the vast majority of people are behind us, and we just aim to continue to fight back against the federal administrations that want to open up this land.